schools here in Cincinnati, talking to young girls about being proud of their bodies, being proud of who they are. She does seminars against bullying. She does everything. But she is just a fantastic business person. She does private consulting for lots of businesses, and you'll hear a lot of business people testifying that they're successful because Morgan has helped them. And so she's going to share her knowledge today with us about branding. And then following Morgan is my daughter Celeste Kearney, who graduated from Dartmouth College. She's going to be working for Goldman Sachs. But for our publishing company, she's our assistant editor for Dayton, and she's also launching our podcast, because she said, you know, if you don't have a podcast, you're missing out on the money. And so she's going to talk about that, and we're really excited. I said, come share your knowledge with everybody. Don't just keep it here at the Herald. Let's let all the publishers hear about how do you launch a podcast and how do you make money from that. And then Aku Williams is doing the app for the Cincinnati Herald, because we don't have one. And so we're like, Aku, we need an app. We need to get an app for that. So he's going to come and talk about how to get your app, why you need it, how that's going to help your business as well. So we're going to let them, we're kind of behind schedule. We're going to try to pare down their presentations to about 20 minutes and then have some time for Q&A. Okay, let's give them all a round of applause all together. Morgan's up first. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Here we go. Oh, I'm good. I can use that.
Jan makes me sound so good, didn't she? I'm like, who is that? Who is she talking about? All right, so I am a true millennial, so I don't like being behind podiums because y'all need to see how good I look. Okay, so I want you all, if you're taking pictures, please take my optimal angles, okay? That's part of my brand. So don't tag me in no foolishness. So if you need a good shot, y'all ready? Here we go. Okay, all right. So that's part of branding. So again, my name is Morgan A. Owens, and I'm here to talk about branding because it is everything. And so I switched up my brand. As you can see, when I first started, I had black hair, and now I'm blonde. And I'm having more fun as a blonde. So I'm going to tell you how to build your brand, protect it, and share it. Y'all ready?
Yes.
Y'all ready?
Yes.
All right. All right, so what is branding? So if you don't know, your brand is your promise to your customer. So I always tell people, you don't own your brand. What others think of you is your brand, right? So I like to use examples, Starbucks versus Dunkin' Donuts. So when you go into a Starbucks, what do you visually expect? Just shout it out. Coffee.
Wooden furniture.
Wooden furniture.
Kind of dim lights.
Dim lights. Music. Green logo.
Friendly service.
Friendly service. Is it clean?
Yes.
Is it inviting to have business meetings?
Yes.
Right? When you go into Dunkin' Donuts, what do you expect? Donuts? Not a place to sit. It's kind of sometimes grungy, right? There's sometimes trash on the floor, you know, donut dust, right? But I still like both places, right? And so Dunkin' Donuts, you can get coffee for what, 99 cents? Starbucks, I'm paying $5,000 to get, you know, my branded, whatever, mochaccino, latte, no foam, extra whip, with 2 shakes of honey. You know what I mean, right? But they both sell what? Coffee, right? So if you go into a Dunkin' Donuts and it's laid out like a Starbucks, you would say what? What? Dunkin' Donuts coming up? What's going on in here? I might not want my donut from here today because it might have changed, right? It might be organic donut. I don't want that. I want my fat-filled glazed donut, right? So, but it's their brand, right? So remember that. So how you make your first impression is everything. And always I tell people, you know, put in your personality, right? Because no one can be you. So as you see through all my branding, like over here, branding's everything, honey. That's how I talk, right? You can still be your authentic self. And I came from corporate. And I learned that I didn't have to lose my identity to be successful. I tried it, it wasn't for me. And I failed. The moment I started being me, I excelled. So you can do it. Maybe that's the millennial in me. You know, I have my tattoos, my piercings, change my hair up, take my wig off in the middle of the day. My boss walks in like, weren't you a different person this morning? I said, I couldn't take that wig. I'm sorry. I had no meetings the rest of the day. But you can still excel. All right, I'm sharing too much. All right, so what do you stand for? You know, who is your ideal customer? What appeals to your ideal customer? How do you want to interact? What's your mission statement? So we know all this type of stuff, right, of branding, I hope. So how to build it? You have to spend those coins. So I always say, it's expensive to be cheap. I'm going to say that one more time. It's expensive to be cheap. So spend the money up front to have those branding foundations, those essentials that you need to make sure your social media is branded, head to toe. Your social media looks like your website. Your website looks like your pop-up. So if you go to my website, go to my Instagram, go to my LinkedIn, see my table out there, Morgan is branded down to the socks, honey. Even in person, right? This is not how Morgan looks every day. But if I'm going out to an event, I'm going out as Morgan A. Owens. Best believe Morgan's going to be beat down, my makeup's going to be done, my nails, everything is going to be done, because that is how I present myself in my brand. I want to walk in the door and people go, who is that? Right? Now, who is that? You know, there's a different connotation to what you want to give off to people. So invest, don't be cheap. So the Herald's getting an app. Yes, that's an investment. And that's going to take them to the next level, because everything is digital now, right? So you have to move into the digital age, no matter how much you fight it. Educate yourself. Going to conferences like this, going to workshops, going to things outside your norm to educate you on how to build your brand. Attending classes. I always tell people, sponsor events. Have your brand associated with people that you want to be on the same level as, right? If Oprah puts out a sponsorship call, I probably can't afford it, but best believe I will strive to put my logo on something attached to Oprah, right? And so I give people opportunities, especially women-owned minority businesses, to attach themselves aligned to me. I'm all about lifting as I climb and putting their brand on a higher platform. You understand? All right. So get brand identity ready. So of course we know all this, you know, your visual brand, your logo, your online marketing. I talked about social media, your signage, communication. Like I said, keep in mind, even my packaging, y'all, is branded. It is branded. So when people get that, you know, package in the mail from me, they automatically see it's me. Now, I'll talk about this a little later about how to protect it, because I've had people, and it happens, that will try to, you know, steal your shine, steal your brand themes, and people will say, isn't that you? I'm like, no, that's somebody else. It happens, right? So keep that in mind. So make sure that you are visually branded all the way through on all platforms. Your logo, I tell people about this. This is more so for small businesses. You know, clip art is not your friend. So if you all have to, you know, get a new logo, or you're branding a special workshop or seminar that you're giving out, and you have to have a logo from scratch, please invest in a made-from-scratch logo. I know for the Herald, we introduced a millennial influencer page on their website, so we redid a whole new logo, but it's still cohesive on the current branding of the Herald, but it's brand new. So don't do clip art. No.
71,000 hits.
71,000 hits right now? Yes. So make sure that you do that. And of course, we know colors, fonts. Make sure that is all the same. Does everyone have like a brand guide that they give out? Do you know what that is?
No.
So a branding guide is something that you would give to someone who is developing artwork for you, graphic design. Say you are sponsoring a conference. So you're telling people, don't put my logo on a neon pink background, right? Because you have to protect your brand. So you're giving people a one-pager that says all your font families, your PMS colors. Everyone know what that is?
Yeah.
So those are like, so the Herald has a special green. So it might be PMS color 253, whatever it is. I know that mine is PMS 240, okay? I don't play about my pinks. So make sure that you have that one sheeter so you can give people that information so you're protecting your brand. So I know a lot of times people will make you flyers and you're like, well, that's close to it. No, make sure that it is seamless with your current brand, because it really makes a difference. It really does in the long run. So if your brand isn't consistent, people, you know, it'll lead to brand confusion, which is the #1 killer of brands, right? So say Coca-Cola comes out with a coral can of Coke. What would you think? Yeah, like what's wrong? Right? Fake Coke. It's a nope. So just think of that. Or you know what, said Starbucks green. We know what that right shade of green is. So say they were off about 2 shades. You would notice, right?
Yes.
So it makes a difference. It's like, what's going on here? Is they selling me old coffee or where are these cups been? So make sure that it's consistent. Okay, so this was my branding before I really got serious about my business. So knowing from my corporate jobs, marketing, branding, I knew better, but I was trying to get things out in a hurry, in a rush, right? And so this was made on Canva, which is a free tool. And so you can see I got a million pinks up there. I don't have professional pictures. My fonts are all, weird and different. But I was just trying to make some coins, right, as an entrepreneur. But when I figured out that my brand could really be something, my business, I had to get serious. And so that was the before, and now look at the after.
Yes.
Hope for oohs and ahs. Do you see the difference? Do you see how this elevated to that? I look like $1 million brand, don't I? That look good. So after that, Curvy Cardio, my first business, which turned 5 this year. Super excited about that. Thank you. So before this, I maybe got 1 or 2 or 10 people in a class. After this, 40 people. Corporate sponsors, UC Health, did national pop-ups for this brand, spoke at my sorority's national leadership conference for this a couple years ago. But this before branding would not have taken me to that next level, right? And I had to be honest with myself. So this, I couldn't invest right away, so I had to invest time. I had to learn how to do graphics. I had to, lean on my corporate job really to teach me how to do graphic design, or lean into other people that I knew that could help me elevate. So if you don't have time, spend the money. If you don't have money, spend the time to elevate your brand. And so this was my second business then, so I knew this was my very first workshop I did, and I knew I had to come correct. So I never ever put a workshop on before, and this branding got me, again, corporate sponsors. I had about 80 people in the room for this event, my very first workshop. Nobody knew what Morgan was going to do, a business workshop. They're like, so are we working out? Because people knew me from Curvy Cardio. Is it a workout? I'm like, no, it's a business workshop. And so this was very successful, and so this elevated into, my one-sheeter media kit, my postcards, my business cards, branded down to the size, right? So the next thing is protect your brand. It's not a game. Treat it like a business, not a hobby, right? Like I said, make sure that you're sending out those brand guidelines to people. Be consistent, right? If you're on social media, make sure your graphics look consistent. And code of ethics, don't copy other people's stuff. That's the biggest thing, because people will see through that. People see through you taking bits and pieces of other people's brands and like, well, they're just copying off this person. I've had people steal my content word for word. I've had people steal my branded graphics and say, oh, I'm sorry, I thought that was clip art. No, honey, it's not clip art. So make sure you protect it. I've trademarked Professional Pretty because I work so hard, just like many of you, to build your brands up, build your businesses up, that, almost cussed, that I will be if someone takes my stuff, right? But you have to invest. You have to protect it. And you have to align yourself with people that are going to protect your brands as well. And then my favorite thing is share it. So make sure you are networking. Make sure you speak up about your business and tell your story. I always share my story about why I started both businesses. Curvy Cardio was because I didn't love how my body looked, and I wanted to be an instructor that other women could look up to. And I say, I hurt just as much as y'all hurting. Sometimes I cuss myself out after the workout because we worked out so hard, right? And I started my second business because I was tired of being the only person of color in the room and then add on a millennial in the room. I was tired of being treated different because of the way I looked. And also I was tired of not having resources for us in my city. So I'm from Cincinnati. And so instead of complaining about there's no workshops for us, I created one. Didn't know how I was gonna do it, but I did it. And it's turned into a full-fledged business, and I've been a full-time entrepreneur for a little over a year now. So if I can do it, I tell thank you. If I can do it, I tell people they can do it too. And, you know, sometimes also my story can be embarrassing. I talk about it in my book, Finding My Sparkle. You know, a lot of people look at me and like, I can't believe you had low self-esteem or body image issues or didn't love yourself or wanted to take your own life in high school. And I did. And so I do the same thing with young girls. They look at me and like, Miss Owens, you're so pretty, you're so this. I'm like, well, sometimes we don't know the story behind the pretty. Sometimes that's a mask. Sometimes we don't realize our potential in ourselves. So now, yes, I know I look good. And so I share that too. There's no shame in my game, but it took me 27 years to say that. And so I'm not afraid to say it now. And so just like your businesses, apply that. Be honest, be authentic. Us millennials, we gravitate to business that are authentic. If you make mistakes, we understand, but own up to your ish, right? Don't be afraid to say your flaws, because we love that, because we're flawed. We don't want to align ourselves to perfect businesses or perfect, stories. We shy away from those because we can see through that. Like, you ain't keeping it real. I'm gonna go this way.
All right.
So, and now the most important thing also is time to put in the work. So we know about branding. We know what we need to do. So make sure you take audits. Make sure you invest, protect, share, network, speak out, and share your story. So how much time do I have to take questions?
We have a few minutes for questions.
Okay.
Yeah, let's take a few questions. You know,
Oh, I just mic drops on everybody.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the logo. How do we find a place to actually do our logo? Because most people, I think, do grab. Okay. Oh, thanks, Chris.
This is Chris, our AV guy. Hey, Chris. Yeah, I was going to ask about finding a place to actually get your logo done.
So I would say, I tell people, seek out a graphic designer who can make a logo from scratch, and then make sure you have them sign off that you own the logo, because I've come across a lot of clients who graphic designers have sold the same logo to multiple people because they own the rights. So we have created logos for businesses like, the Herald, the Chamber, and so we want to make sure that we sign off those rights so we can't go and peddle the same logo. Or, when you, go large and try to sue you because that's our logo, because we own it. And a lot of people go to Fiverr, but you just have to be really careful. Yeah, really careful on that. And so if you need help, you can reach out to local colleges for graphic, designer students. Yep, or there's Jordan in the room. Holla at Jordan.
Jordan, raise your hand.
Yes.
And you can use some, for those of you, and that's most of you from out of town, we're going to make sure you have information for everybody presenting this week so that you can contact them.
Yes.
Morgan, can you talk a little bit about positioning your brand with millennials? What are some of the things, knowing that many of us are still in print, but also transitioning to multimedia and social media?
Right.
What are some of the things, give me 3 to 5 points that you would say, here are some things that you should do to connect with millennials and establish your brand?
Sure. So I'll use the Herald, because Jan is just so nice. She loves all my ideas. She's like, yes, let's do it. So we've done a couple things. So coming up with an influencer page. So that is more, we did the Working Women Project. So it was highlighting over 100 women of color around Cincinnati and their businesses, and doing short testimonials, videos for social media, and then a brunch event and a headshot event. So what happened with that, and most of them were millennials.
What's a headshot event?
So it's networking, and we took headshots for everybody. So they were branded. And so a lot of millennials don't have headshots because we love selfies, including me. They don't know the power of the headshot. And so we did that campaign. So that not only attracted them to the website, because they're going to share that post, and attracting them to social media. So people that have never followed the Herald are following the Herald now. So like Jan said, that campaign got, oh my goodness, 71,000 follows, multiple, I can't even count. It just blew up social media because everyone was sharing, and then people started getting the attention of the Herald, sending messages in their inbox saying, you know, can I be featured? How do I do this? I never knew the Herald did this type of stuff. So bringing that kind of awareness. Doing mix and mingle type events. So something social that we can get out and network with people. Opportunities like that. So definitely social media. And like I said, everything is digital. You know, I don't read the paper, even though I buy the Herald. I have a subscription because I support. But everything is digital. So for me, it's that phone. So anything you can put on that phone. Have news articles both in print and online so we can readily share. You know, social media, Facebook, Twitter. I think I'm probably the only millennial that doesn't tweet, but I'm more so on Instagram. So those short little reads is what attracted to millennials. You're welcome.
Hi everybody, my name is Jordan Ivory. I am speaking this afternoon at 4:45 on harnessing the amazing power of Facebook. So we'll be doing a deeper dive into how to take that branding that you have and stretch it across digital media purposes. We're going to focus very hardcore on in terms of Facebook, but I'm going to talk to you about how you can change your print materials to actually put them in front of millennials who only have access to digital in their minds, okay? You know, graphic design is one thing, but finding a digital designer and a branding powerhouse like Morgan A. Owens brand is truly what you need in terms of design work, because we aren't just focusing on one project, we are focusing on the overall campaign, okay? And as you all are publishers and individuals that deal with print, you understand more so than these millennials do about campaigns, about how ads have to be placed. And so, you know, the thing is that you want to make sure that this is something that can be associated with other things, like Morgan said, with the Cincinnati Herald and working women. You know, we brought in women who know Jan Michelle Kearney, know Eric Kearney, but did not realize what the Herald had in store. So, you know, I'll dig deeper in my session, but I want you guys to really realize that the digital age is more so about the brand presence. The brand presence. So what Morgan is saying to you is truly giving yourself that look so that you can extend across all platforms.
So thank you. If you guys have any questions, I'll be here. My table's out there with my books if you need anything, but I'm going to turn it over to Celeste, who's going to talk about podcasts.
I have a question for you.
Oh, yes.
This is all fine for publishers.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go back to my office and have a staff meeting,
Yes.
what am I going to tell them? You know,
Just because of
they should be here.
Yes.
To me.
Well, bring me there. I'd love to come. We can have a side conversation.
These things that you're having,
Yes.
to me, you should have it so that I can take something back, even if I had to buy it and present it to them and they play it back.
Absolutely.
So you know what, we're gonna check and see if we can get the presentations and make sure you all can share them.
The other suggestion I have is that we consider doing webinars with her that can be shared by all of us.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. That's
We have
great.
webinars next year. We have to share the
Okay, oh, and Stacy said we have a video, this is all being videotaped.
Yes,
So
and
we'll
we'll share it.
we'll find out from Dr. Chavis how to get this out to everybody. Okay, so that way you can share it with your staff. That's a great idea, thank you so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Celeste Kearney. I'm the podcast producer for the Cincinnati Herald, and today I'm going to talk. Oh, can you hear me now? Okay. So I'm Celeste Kearney. I'm the podcast producer for the Cincinnati Herald, and I'm going to talk about how to launch your podcast. So here's a link to the slides as well as a QR code, so you can get a copy right now.
So what, do we just take a picture of it?
Yeah. So you take a picture, or you don't take a picture. You hover your phone camera over it, and the link. Well, you can't really read it, but it'll be on the later slide too. Yeah. Okay, so first I'm going to talk about why podcasts, how to start your podcast, making money, and some idea for best practices. I'll also show the link to the slides later on to make sure you get it before I leave. Okay, so why podcasts? So first of all, who listens to podcasts in here? Oh, good. Okay, good. I'm glad to see that. So there's a global network of potential listeners. So as you know, anyone around the world can listen to podcasts. So over 50% of the US population listens to podcasts, so there are a lot of people that you can target through your podcast. And so, for example, in 2008, overall, podcasts made over $400 million in revenue. So there's a lot of money being spent on advertising through podcasts, so I'm going to try to help you tap into that. And so the most popular platform for listening is on Apple Podcasts. Does anyone listen on Apple Podcasts? Okay, yeah. So it's an automatic app. Download it on all iPhones when you get it, and so that's where a lot of people listen. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on when we talk about starting your podcast, because it is kind of the gold standard of where to listen. So, where to begin? So there are a few things that you need when you're talking about the components of a podcast. Obviously, you need a host and guest for each episode. You also need a microphone with good audio quality. Those are easy to find online, kind of depending on your budget and how much you want to spend. And so for the actual show, so when you open up the podcast, you have the title and description, you have cover art, which we're going to talk more about, and then you have to pick categories for it. And then for each episode, you want to make sure you have a catchy title and a description to entice people into listening. And then there'll be a separate audio file for each one. And then kind of on the back end components of a podcast is you have the RSS feed, which is just a link to where you upload the episodes. And you're going to put that give that to iTunes. And then you want to make sure you have analytics so you can learn more about your listeners. So, okay, hosting platform. So this is where it gets a little technical. So you want to have you need a platform where you upload each episode. So then you submit this RSS feed, which is a link to that website, to iTunes. And so every time you upload your website to your platform, upload each episode to your platform, then it automatically updates in iTunes, and then it gets promoted to all of your subscribers. So here are a few popular hosts. So if you're trying to figure out the best host for you, I would kind of start with these companies to find out what works best. Make sure you look to see the cost, how much storage you have, as well as the analytics are included, because that's important to learn about your listeners when you're trying to talk to advertisers. So I think there are a few different categories for how to structure a show. So I call them snippet episodes. They're under 10 to 15 minutes, and so they're generally posted more frequently. So for example, NPR does an hourly podcast that's 5 minutes, and they post it every hour. So you get that little snippet of news, or other podcasts I post every morning with just a short episode. And then there are kind of these mid-length episodes, which are about 30 minutes. So it might be a host talking with a guest about their new book or something like that. And so there might be about 2 ad breaks in those, so one at the beginning, one in the middle. And then you have kind of longer episodes. So those are over 45 minutes. And so those can be split into multiple segments. So for example, you might have a 30-minute segment where a host talks to a guest about a topic, and then another 15 minutes where the 2 hosts answer questions from listeners or talk about current events or something. I generally recommend keeping episodes under an hour because that's where you start to lose focus. So when you're writing the show title and description, it's important to be catchy. So with the title, you want it to be something people are interested in, and you don't want it to be too repetitive. So if someone searches for it in the Apple Podcast directory, you don't want 10 other podcasts with the same name to come up because people aren't going to know what's yours. And then your descriptions, you want to keep those short and also kind of catchy so people are engaged. But you want to give an overall summary of the show and say who the host is. And then for cover art, it's really important that it's recognizable. So what Morgan was talking about with branding, perfect for this. You want it to be part of your brand and easy to read on your phone because it's a little thumbnail. Okay, so we're going to do an exercise. So if everyone wants to grab a partner, I want you to look at these cover art examples and talk about what works well and what doesn't. So everyone grab a partner and talk for about a minute about what you think works well.
Yeah, sure. I think that really stands out the most, like out of all, because you got the host Trevor Noah, and he's got the views and everything. I don't know. That's the one that stands out to me a lot.
It's not like he's engaging.
Okay, so we're going to gather back. Okay, so does one person want to share one thing that they liked about one of these logos? Go ahead.
I like the nod because I can see, the sort of audience that they're going for, and that act identify with that audience. So I would probably.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Hey, Chris. Here comes Chris. Wait a minute. Chris is the architect.
Testing. Okay. I was saying that I really like the nod because I can see who the hosts are. I think they're the hosts, and I can identify with them. So it's something that would stick out to me, and I think I would hope that I could relate to the content that they're producing.
Okay, great. So does one person want to share something that they think can be improved about one of these logos, or something they didn't like?
Unladylike could have some clarity as to whether that's a middle finger or.
I think it is.
Yeah, I think that's what they were going for. But yeah, so that's kind of a funny logo, but that's kind of the point of the show. It's talking about feminism and kind of changing the way women are in the world. Okay, so the good. Oh wait. Yeah, so since we all talked about the cover art, it's important to have something that catches someone's eye and makes them intrigued to listen. So for example, with the nod, you see the host, you're like, I want to listen to this podcast, find out what's going on. Okay, so when you're outlining your episode, so it's important to outline each episode so you have a plan for what's going to happen. So first you want to have an introduction, so you have some catchy theme music, you should have a description of the show and the host, keep it really short, and you can just pre-record it one time and then just play it at the beginning of every episode. You don't need to record it each time. Some podcasts choose to do an overview of the episode, so the host will, kind of give an outline about the different segments and who the guests are and stuff like that. That might be effective depending on the topic of your podcast. And then you can have your various segments afterwards. So you want to have music transitions or transitions with ads between each segment. And then you want to have an outro, more catchy music, and then mention all the contributors and thank people for listening and encourage them to rate, review, and subscribe. Subscribers are really a good way to get people listening to your podcast each week. So when you subscribe, you automatically get a notification when a new episode is posted, and it comes up in your feed. So you know about your podcast, you know what's going on, so you can listen. And then make sure to plug social media handles as well. So when you're writing your episode descriptions, so each episode has its own description, you want to keep it short and you want to include a lot more information. So include social media for the guest and the host, links for more topics. So if the hosts are talking about a topic with a guest, give a link for more information or more resources. Give information about sponsors. So if you have a promo code or a website that the sponsor wants you to use, make sure to include that in the description. And then link to the social media for the show or your newspaper, whoever is the producer. So we're going to use the nod as an example. So if you're not familiar with the Apple Podcast, this is kind of how it looks. So the screenshot on the left shows when you pull up the nod. So you see the description of the show. You see they have almost 3,000 ratings, which is really high. And then you can click subscribe and then get notified with new episodes. So here are some examples of recent episodes they have. And so you can look at the description. So for example, the screenshot on the right is for How to Show Up, their episode from June 17th. So you can read the description, find out if you're interested, and then listen to the episode. So making money, that's really the important part here. So first, it's important to build your listener base. So when you're rating, reviewing, encouraging listeners to rate, review, and subscribe, that's how you get people to listen. So if they're, subscribing and they see your episodes in their feed each week, for example, then they're more likely to talk about it with their friends because it's fresh in their mind. So there's also the new and noteworthy section on Apple Podcasts. So it's a special section with new podcasts that are getting a lot of attention. So it's good to try to go after that since you'll get a lot more press through it. And it's important to kind of use the cover art as a way to get people to click on the podcast and listen and then plug it on social media because that's another great way to get people. So advertising, that's also really big. A lot of money is being spent on advertising for podcasts. So instead of kind of a commercial format where a third party is talking about the ad, generally the host or hosts of the show will talk about the product. So for example, I was listening to a podcast that was advertising for sheets. So the two hosts were going back and forth about how great these sheets were from this company. So they're just kind of talking more like friends rather than a professional, or not really professional, but a more formal advertisement. And so you might want to start with thinking of local advertisers, especially if your podcast is focused more towards a local audience. So use that as a way to start building people to listening to your podcast. And then there's also affiliate marketing, so that's big with podcasts. So you'll get a promo code, and then you'll get a certain percentage of sales. So for example, for the sheets advertisement I heard the other day, if I use their promo code to buy these sheets, then they'll get a certain percentage of the sale. So that's another good way to get money. And so advertising costs are based on cost per 1,000 impressions. So the rate is about $18 to $25 per 1,000 impressions you have. So making sure you get a lot of people to download, subscribe, and listen to your podcast so you can build the number of impressions and get more money through advertising. So Patreon is a popular platform that people are using to also gain money. So it's separate from Apple Podcasts and other podcasting apps, and it's subscription-based. So you might pay $3 a month, and you'll get exclusive content for Patreon for a podcast. So that's another way podcasts are able to bring in revenue through this additional premium content service. So here's some advice for best practices. So it's important to post frequently and consistently. So set a time when your episodes will come out so people can look forward to it. So for example, there's a podcast I listen to, the episodes come out Wednesdays at 8 p.m. I know they come out then, so I can download the episode that night, have it ready to listen to Thursday morning. So I look forward to that schedule. And you also want to have a consistent length. So you don't want episodes that are 45 minutes one week, 15 minutes another week. People aren't really going to know what's going on. So consistency is important. It's also great to engage with listeners. So you can have the host answer questions from listeners, gather those on social media, collect voice recordings and play those. Those are great ways to get people engaged in your podcast and listening more frequently. And then every time you have a new episode, post heavily on social media so people are aware. So you get your followers, you can get people from your newspaper who read your newspaper to also check it out. But it's important to build that base. So I'm going to share a copy of the slides, but here are links for more places online to kind of gather information to learn more. So there's the QR code, so you can download a copy of the slide, and then and then in the next slide, I have the QR code, so you can get a copy of all the slides, so you can have all of this information. Yeah. So use the QR code, so you hover your phone camera over it. The link is bit.ly/NNPA pods. Can't really read it right there, but yeah. So anyone have questions about podcasting?
I want to hear something about crowdfunding as far as how you see that working with the podcast.
Well, it's more getting listeners engaged in it. So I think Patreon is kind of what people use a lot with podcasts to grab crowdfunding through the additional premium content. But kind of encouraging people to listen, I think should be the first priority. And then once then, you can kind of get people to give donations, or you can get advertisers that way.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys, where's the mic?
Where are you?
Okay. Oh, hey, CJ. CJ's one of our interns.
Thank you, CJ. So in DC, we started a podcast for our newspaper. And what we did is we would host an event once a month where we would interview maybe like 8 people, and it wasn't ticketed, but you know, we might have 100, 200 people show up to the event. We tried to do the podcast live, so like use Facebook Live and other social media platforms, YouTube. And so what we do, we interview like 8 people over maybe 2-hour session, and then we would cut up those interviews into different podcasts that we, you know, hope to push out weekly or, you know, more often. But what I found is that doing the event was costly. You know, we usually had to get a space. There might be a bar minimum. You know, there's some costs associated marketing materials. So I'm wondering, but it was a good way to build our listener base, which is one thing you talked about, and also to brand our business and to, you know, brand our podcast. But it just cost too much, and we stopped doing it because we didn't also figure out how to make money off the podcast. So I appreciate those slides that you presented. I guess I'm wondering, what do you think about like that type of concept, like live podcasting?
Yeah, I think those are really gaining in popularity right now. Also kind of building up content, so having 8 interviews on one day, and so you can push out an episode a week or something like that. That's also really good to have, so you have that content built up. I know some people, did you charge for your live podcast host? Okay, yeah, I know some people will do that, like charge a small fee to kind of hopefully offset the cost of production, or get sponsors for it as well.
I was just going to chime in, sponsorships.
Yeah, the microphone. With the CJ.
Yes, I was just saying that sponsorships would off-cost that. So if you're interviewing people, if they're of influence or they're of different companies, so say I'm doing an event and I have a speaker from UC Health, I'm going to tap into them to help sponsor, and then just say your why. You're a minority-owned, publishing, business. This is why you should tap into this, or even the venues, food. Honey, I get sponsorships for everything if I can. So yes, because the goal is to help increase. I think a lot of times people need to know, like, it takes money to build a business and build a company. So I'm like, 100 people, you didn't monetize even $1 a person. Everybody got dollars, $1 to get in.
That's something back off the bar,
right.
It's a typical
Yes.
event, money, but
right.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, that is a great idea.
That's a great idea. And I like the thing about subscribers, because for the Washington Informer, I was going to say, for the Washington Informer, you guys have 200 people showing up, and then they all have their own people. So if they all get their people to subscribe, and then you've got a big base, and corporations will be interested in advertising, right, Celeste? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. There's a question.
Yeah, I got a question.
Where's CJ?
Oh, you got another one.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Um,
That's Jada, our other intern, Jada Wade. Okay. We have some great interns. Oh my goodness, they're wonderful.
Celeste, I have a quick question. What length do you think is the perfect, time for a podcast? Do you think snippet, or do you think a long or mid-length?
I think it depends on kind of what you're going after. So if you're trying to do more of a news-based podcast, I think shorter is better. But if you're having people talk about an issue, I think the 30 minutes or kind of up to 45 minutes to an hour might be better, depending on how many hosts you have and how engaging people are talking.
Now, what about video podcasts? Do you think video podcasts would be better, or just audio only? Because it's like, I know some people's attention spans are kind of short, so I'm thinking like a video podcast, you actually see the people and everything, or do you think audio podcasts, would be better over video podcasts?
Yeah. Personally, I'm a big fan of audio podcasts, especially since a lot of people listen, while doing chores around the house or while commuting. So I think audio is good for that. But you can also, if you live record the podcast, you can give the audio file. You can also have the videos online, so you can get people both ways. Maybe a good way to kind of tap into our audience.
Question. For the engagement, you said you could do the call-ins. Are you talking about a pre-recorded show, or are you talking about a live show when you were talking about
so pre-recorded. So you would have people call into a number, and then you would take their voice recording. So when you're recording the podcast, you use that. So it's something that's already been recorded in advance. It's
so we aren't talking about the community calling in to engage. We're talking about guests or someone like that.
Yeah, or you can have you can collect these audio recordings in advance, and then when the hosts are recording the episode, that's when you would use them. So pulling the pre-recorded.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Talking about live at first. Okay.
Yeah.
the podcast is not live, it's pre-recorded.
Yeah.
Go live.
Yeah, most of the time it's pre-recorded.
Yeah.
If I might just piggyback that statement about the pre-recorded live, I think the pre-recorded, you're probably thinking of what I was thinking, and that's basically who's going to review it before it goes live, before it gets loaded up, so people can go do it, because we just don't want anything out there.
Okay.
So we're going to now move on to, was there one more question? Okay, we'll do last question.
My question is, you mentioned the Apple News and Noteworthy, I think was what it was called.
Yeah.
But how realistic is it to make it to that feature? Like, roughly, how many do you anticipate subscribers you need before that you would be spotlighted there?
They don't really release how many you need to kind of hit that threshold, but I think the trick is to kind of build up a lot of content and a lot of hype before you go live with the podcast. So getting a lot of people kind of ready to listen and engage and promoting it on social media. And then once you launch it, then those people are already ready to listen to your podcast. So that way you can build a lot of subscribers, a lot of listeners kind of right off the bat. Does it make sense?
He does.
Celeste,
Okay, one more.
Okay.
He's ventured off and done podcasts. I'm still sitting at my desk trying to figure out how to get this done. You've talked about equipment, what have you. My biggest challenge is, do I do this in my office? Do I do this in a studio? Do I do this in my car? I mean, is there a place where that's best to do it? Do you need to be consistent with that place and space? And do you have to worry about acoustics and the other technical parts of that?
Yeah, just somewhere as quiet as possible. I know some people record in a closet if they don't have a studio or something because it's, quiet, it's enclosed. I think it's just important. You can also try out a few different locations in your office. So like recording, you talking in different areas and see which one has the best audio quality might be a good way to kind of play around with locations. But I think a studio is ideal if you're able to get access to that.
I don't think I can bring anybody in my closet.
Our office just moved, but we have one room that we've saved as a media room with a comfortable couch. We're going to do podcasts there, but Senator Nina Turner, who's going to be here with Bernie Sanders on Friday, has a podcast, and her whole shtick is she does it from her car. So she'll say, like, I'm sitting in the car with, Senator Kamala Harris, and we're talking about this. That's like her thing. So you could do it in the car too. So you don't need a lot of equipment for podcasts. Celeste came to me and she's like, here's your microphone. We're ready to go. I mean, it's not expensive. You don't need a lot of equipment. So that's a real cool thing about it. Thank you, Celeste. Great job.
So now we have A.Q. Williams to talk about getting apps.
Thank you.
Good morning. Today I'm going to essentially just talk about the benefits of getting an app for your business. And I think in regards to the conference that we're having this weekend, you really want to focus on really getting that information out, and you want to close the gap between your paper products, which we have, and as I want to say, millennials. People are using the internet, people are using apps. You just want quick access, and people want access to information as quickly as possible. So one of the things we're going to talk about today overall is just really getting the app and the benefits of it. Just a small background about myself, to make sure you guys know that I know what I'm talking about. I graduated from UC, IT, I've been in IT over 15 years. I'm in the IT audit now. I actually developed an app to focus on minority and black businesses a couple years ago. And then I do various works in the community that focus on technology, just giving back. And I also do business consulting on process improvement and IT development, app and website development. So while we're here, first of all, what is an app, right? So an app essentially is just computer software created for your mobile devices. At the end of the day, like anything else, it's on your phone, it's a computer application, just minimized. But right now we're at a certain phase in 2019 where it's growth and people just want everything on their phone. So websites are becoming optimized. People want quick access and they just want it on their phone without necessarily going home or opening up their laptop to utilize that. And essentially what software is computer software, or simply software is a set of instructions that tells the computer device what to do. I'm going to be very simple without going super technical for the audience. I'm sure you don't want to hear all this super technical jargon, so we're not going to go that detailed. It's going to be very high level and really the benefits of having an app to grow your business. So why an app? I mean, one of the things I think right now, if everybody pulls out their phone, we all have apps, we all use apps for very different things. So I use this graphic simply because of the growth. If we look at right now, 14% of people actually use a website on their phone, whereas 86% of people who have what I would consider a smartphone nowadays, 86% of people are using apps. It's very useful, they're very needy, and I also show a little bit of graphic just in regards to what they do. You got social messaging, you have YouTube, you have Facebook, you have Instagram, and what are other various apps that you have on your telephone. But people are downloading apps which make sense to them on a daily basis. Some people use newspapers, younger kids just use social media, Snapchat, you name it, there's usually an app for that. If not, currently right now, while we're all sitting in a room, someone is developing and drawing up ideas to create an app, because that is the movement of today in the 21st century. And this one's just really just showing the number of devices that are getting shipped. You know, people right now, you either have an iOS, which is the iPhone, or an Android, which is an open platform, not to get too technical. But at the end of the day, everybody's using a smartphone because it's the easy access, and it's just the wave of the future. So I have a couple bullet points that I just want to essentially talk about the benefits of an app. People always ask me all the time, why should I get a website versus an app when I do consulting? And it really, at the end of the day, it depends on your business model and really what you can afford. Let's be honest here. Apps are a little bit more expensive. You looking at $5,000 to $10,000 plus compared to a website that essentially you can actually do yourself. But again, because of the easeability of an app and the growth of it, and really demand. So that demand is causing the creation of people with time and effort to create these things. So one of the first bullet points that I have is connectivity, right? So having an app which provides your customers instant access to you. So as a newspaper or a business, that click of the button on your phone gives you instant access to the app, the information on your business. You can do things within that app, play video games, you get information. And also with connectivity on the back end, it allows you to connect with the customers. Sometimes you can have emails sent out. I'm sure right now on your phones, depending on the app that you use the most, you get notifications. You could have a Target app, you could have a Macy's app, you could have Instagram. You know, if they have an ad or a special going on that day, that notification will come up on your phone depending on if you have notifications set up, right? So that is the love of having an app. You can't do that with a website. You can't do that, you know, waiting on an email. You have to go look for the email rather than having that connectivity, that instant access for that business. So in this case, as far as publication, if something is going on within a community, I don't have time to wait on a newspaper, to be honest, or go look at the website. It's going to be a plus to a millennial or whomever that has something going on within that community, that notification being pushed through immediately so you can know, right? Again, second bullet point, convenience. How convenient is that to know something is going on in a community? It could be something great, something bad could be happening. But it's that convenience of knowing what's going on. And that is the plus of having an app versus having a website or just paper publication. Mobility. You know, you can be driving around, you can be in the store, you can be in your office, you can pull that app up immediately. And again, these are pluses of just having an app for your business, because right now people want to connect, they want to see stuff, and we're spoiled nowadays. We want instant access to whatever we want to read, whatever we want to look at. We want that continued base of connectivity. And to be consistent between what Morgan was talking about and everybody else, branding, right? You want to grow your business. You can't be nowadays, depending on your business model, newspaper, business, whatever, that branding is essential to your business. And nowadays, depending on your business model, whatever you're doing, they'll ask you that question. Do you have an app? Is it something I can download? Because if that's something I want to use on a time-to-time basis, I want to use that. So for example, people have CNN apps, you have your news apps, and at the end of the day, that's what you want. It makes your brand look good, it makes you look reliable, and it's instant access to get that information. And that's a plus in today's environment. So when I'll actually read through it, create a brand that customers will enjoy. The more they use the app with the brand, they will buy your product or use your services more. Another plus is app sync with other social media sites. And that's key, right? So when I say app sync with other social media sites, if you have, we'll just say Cincinnati Herald, if they had an app, if there's an article that's important to you, you can actually share that to everybody else who's connected to you, right? So that would be a plus for the Herald or whatever newspaper publication whatever business, is having that instant connectivity to grow your brand. Because I might not know the article going on in the Cincinnati Herald, but if I'm reading it and I want to share that with all my friends, now they know. Well, they might not even know the Cincinnati Herald has an app. So what do? I go and download that app. Now that's another download for the Cincinnati Herald, which I'll segue into monetization, right? At the end of the day, we all want to make money, depending on what it is, what you're doing. Like Morgan was talking earlier, you want to monetize and make money off of pretty much whatever your product is. And there's different ways to monetize. Of course, there's advertising, selling goods and services, or this article space, because as reliability from an app standpoint, now, because if I know people are using your apps, there's statistics on the back end. So if I am trying to sell to you to advertise with me, I can show you the statistics on the back end. I can say I started off at 2 or 3 users, and within a month now I have 20,000 people who downloaded my app. If I'm an advertiser, that's what I want to hear, because now you're going to reach 20,000 people. But that's not including the people who that information is being shared. Because if I share an article, I might have that advertisement within that article that just got shared to another 20,000 people. So now you went from 20,000 to 40,000, which could possibly be to 60,000, upwards to 100,000. It's the little things like that people don't think about when they think about apps on the back end of connectivity and monetization. And that's why a lot of people right now are doing that. Like Celeste was talking about, the clicks and impressions. There's ways to advertise on that too, because within the app, I know sometimes you see stuff at the bottom of apps that might get on your nerves, but if you see something that makes sense to you, you'll click on that advertisement. That right there, that's money going into the pocket of the advertiser, but it's also an impression that whoever owns the app, they're making money too. So every time someone clicks on that, just think dollar cents. It grows. And these are essentially a lot of the high-level benefits of the app. What I also did not put on here is the little technical things. So having an app, you can share. Not only you can share with other entities, you can take pictures. There's other things that apps you can utilize, the GPS. There's so many different essentials that's with an app that you can't get on the website, even if you use a website on your telephone. There's other integral pieces on the back end that people don't know about, nor do they really think about when it comes to having an app, and that's why people are using it so much. And this last slide is just the growth, right? I mean, just look within 2015 to 2016, which in the next couple months, 2020. These are the people, this is actually revenue that are growing because, again, people are using apps so much, so why not monetize off of it? Again, different ways to monetize an app, but just the growth right now of people just making money. People are making millions and millions of dollars off an app. And it doesn't necessarily be a business. There's people who have blogs who have an app because people just want to hear what they said. If you follow that individual, people will realize that. Same with a podcast. You're making money off a podcast. People are now introverting their podcast and creating apps off of that because people now want to advertise with them and they want to share that information. So why not have an app and draw and put additional information within that app so people can use? Again, it's just investing in yourself. I think I want to say just thankful that everybody came before me because I'm tying everything in to what Celeste and Morgan was saying. Yes, an app can be very expensive. I'm not going to even begin to lie. It's definitely investment. But at the end of the day, the money that can come from an app is insurmountable. So just think about, I always tell people in consulting, pay now or pay a whole bunch later. This is what I do in corporate for years. When people didn't want to spend the money now, I'm like, well, eventually at the end of the day, you're going to spend millions of dollars more on the back end because you didn't want to invest now, and you're going to be mad at yourself. Put the money up now, invest now, and just let it grow. And one of the other things that I've also done is because in growing apps, you can still grow it. You can build piece by piece. So you might put a little bit of money into it now, watch it as people download it, see how they use it. That's how I consult. You don't have to put tens of thousands into it at first, but look how people are using it, then we can go back to the table. We might have to do a redesign, we might have to remarket it or rebrand it, but we can kind of see those essential things on the back end that can grow your product from a longevity standpoint. And of course, at the end of the day, how do I get to an app? What is the process? Very high level. Define your business model. Understand your target market, which is essential. You want to know who's going to use your app so you can market directly to them. Meet with the developer. In my case, I don't necessarily, I have a team that I work with that we develop, but I do requirements. It's really trying to understand your idea, because at the end of the day, the app is your app. It's your idea. I'm just going to put it in a technical platform so we can build out the app for you, begin to sketch your ideas and jot them down. And when I say that, I mean at any given cost. We all have like that little notes app on your phone. Anytime you're thinking of ideas, just jot. When I consult, I said, no matter where you're at, you know, from at the desk, I said, you know, and I joke, but even on the toilet, you know, jot down ideas, because that's when you're thinking. If you're constantly thinking, jot all those ideas down, and then when we meet, I bring those ideas to life for you. Next phase, design, develop, test, launch. It seems very easy, but at the end of the day, an app can take 3 to 6 months, sometimes up to a year. It really just depends on how profound and how robust your app is. And this Q&A, that's very high level. I assume so.
CJ?